Hi friends, welcome to Fostering Kingdoms, where faith sits at the heart of fostering and we build kingdom-led homes in the middle of real life. I'm Jess, a wife, mother, veteran, foster carer, and I'm here walking this journey with you. So let's dive in. So after talking about rest and regulation and how that impacts on us, it makes sense to talk about what this is really building towards, and that's emotional safety. Because without emotional safety, children can't learn, trust, or heal. But neither can we. Today's episode is all about creating emotional safety in our homes, in ourselves, and in our relationships. But before we can even begin to dive into that topic, let's just first uncover what emotional safety really means to us as people and to the children that we look after. Emotional safety is a sense of being accepted, being understood, being protected, being allowed to exist without fear. And I'm just going to ask you, do you currently feel safe? Is there any areas that you feel that you need to work on? Do you feel like you're fully accepted for who you are? Do you feel like you're fully understood? Do you feel protected? I know in this role as a foster carer, there is very limited protection for us and what we do. When we look at emotional safety, it's not about the absence of rules or domination from others. True safety is being built in the presence of connection with other safe people. Our emotional safety, going back to feeling accepted, to feeling understood, we can really anchor into that safety when we have the community around us. Now, that can be really difficult as foster carers to say that we have emotional safety in all areas of our lives. But when we pull it back to the foster children that we look after, their trauma is always asking one thing: am I safe here? But we too, as foster carers, we live with that sense of, am I safe? There is so many allegations that get thrown out, not just from children, but from other adults around us too. But the children in our care, their way of saying, am I safe here? They ask that through behaviours, through withdrawal, through anger, trying to control and manipulate situations, or even through silence. And our response, whether that is verbal or physical or emotional, that gives them the answer that they're looking for. As foster carers, we have a lot of training that we have to go on, and all of our training is based on how we answer the children that we look after. All of our training is based on how do they feel safe. We're taught how to answer those questions for the children, but we're not taught or even asked if those questions are relevant for us, and how do we answer those questions for us. I've learned over the years that personal safety, that's something that we have to look after ourselves and something that we have to create, but also something that we need to have awareness to. And recognizing that our own healing, that doesn't begin when we change everything about ourselves to feel safe. But our personal healing, that begins when we feel safe enough to soften, when we're safe enough to be honest, when we're safe enough to stop pretending to be something that we're not, safe enough to be held and know that we don't need to be fixed, safe enough to be our true self, not always on guard trying to protect ourselves. When I learned that safety, it wasn't loud or dramatic, but it was built in the consistency. It was built in the gentleness. It was knowing that I wouldn't be abandoned for struggling. I learned that true safety, that was feeling safe in the environments that I got to call home. This is ultimately what children are looking for. They've experienced unsafe situations. They may not know what true safety looks like, but ultimately, as humans, our bodies, our minds are wired for survival and we seek safety. So the children that we care for, this is what they're looking for: emotional safety and physical safety. But we really do have to learn what that looks like for us before we can teach others. So as carers, it's vital that we understand this for ourselves. Because when we can create that safety, that is when the behaviours start to change. We're always taught on how to correct behaviours, how to manage difficult situations and difficult behaviours. Very rarely are we taught safety before the correction. And sometimes for some children, discipline without safety often looks and feels like rejection, like they're not good enough. And this just stacks onto their emotional dysregulation and self-worth. We have to understand that when there is safety built, connection is built. And knowing that connection, that doesn't remove boundaries. And I highly recommend that you listen to the boundaries episode if you feel like you need more support here. Boundaries actually create more safety for children, and it gives them more meaning. Discipline, it isn't about domination or abuse over another person, but it's about creating a safe path. It's about guiding from our past experiences rather than from a place of control. It's about showing another way. So when we come to our children with correction for their behavior and we have safety, that looks like a calm environment. We have eye contact, we have a gentle tone, and we reassure that they are not bad. There may have been a bad situation, there may have been a bad outcome, but ultimately that child is not completely defined by the situation or their actions. Also understanding that when we create boundaries and reassurance with the children, we're not pandering to them. We're not pandering to the child or to their demands, but we're setting a standard and a tone. We come at the child with clear direction. Maybe there may be options within the discipline. For example, you can give them clear direction. It may be giving them the choice between two options. When you are firm in your boundaries and your safety, you don't wobble. You don't cave into the children. The children will test you to see if you are a strong adult, if you are actually somebody that they can rely on. So when you wobble, when you start to cave to the children, you're not creating emotional safety within yourself, but also within that child. So emotional safety for carers is so important, but also recognizing it's not just for the children, but we need it too. Because when we have emotional safety, that allows us to rest and relax when it comes to feeling overwhelmed. Go and check out the rest episode. We're allowed to ask for help without guilt. You're allowed to be imperfect throughout all of these moments. It's always about learning. But you cannot create safety for others if you feel unsafe in yourself. God reminds us of this. God reminds us of our emotional safety. God reminds us that He is not harsh. God reminds us that He's not unpredictable. He reminds us that He is not unsafe. He is the one anchor that we can always return to. He is the same yesterday as He is today, as He will be tomorrow. In Psalms 34:18, it says, "The Lord is close to the brokenhearted." God is always with us. We can reflect God to our home, to the children that we care for our work colleagues, for our peers, for whoever it may be, when we are consistent, calm, and compassionate. I will come back to this time and time again. There's always practical ways that don't need to feel overwhelming, overburdening. These are small things that we can do to build safety in the daily routine. And that's by creating predictable routines. Following through. When you say you're going to do something, do it. When we build on repair after rupture, coming back with calm, safe, and if we have to, apologize. That builds trust, and trust builds safety. Have a calm voice during conflict. Now, this is one thing that I've had to learn. So from my time in the army, I've had to use my voice, I've had to shout, I've had to give commands, I've had to be very loud in the field to be heard. I don't need to be loud in my home to be heard. I can have more of an impact with the calmness in my voice. And again, going back to reassurance after mistakes, the child are not the mistakes. The mistakes may have been a bad situation, but that is not a reflection completely on the child and who they are and their self-worth. Safety is built through repetition, through systems and consistency. Safety is not built on perfection or performance, trying to be something that you are not. Safety and healing, they can't happen through control. They happen through safety. And safety is something that you are building each and every day, even when it feels invisible, even when it feels like you're not quite doing enough. Know that when you are learning and you are growing and you are putting yourself as a priority, you are building safety through your actions, through your love, and through your commitment. So thank you for being here with me on Fostering Kingdoms. I'm Jess, and I'll catch you on the next episode.